Hey guys, this video is going to be about understanding food labels and just breaking down macronutrients. So I'm not really going to talk about nutritional value in the ways of like vitamins, minerals, fibers, etc. I just want to look at the main macronutrients and kind of understanding calorie counting from those labels. And I'm going to refer to the app MyFitnessPal because in my opinion and in my experience, it's the easiest way of tracking calories. This all feeds back into all my videos that I've done about understanding how to get to fat loss. And the number one way to get to fat loss is in a calorie deficit. If you don't know what's in your food, then how are you going to get there? So hopefully this video can give you a bit of an insight as to what a high amount of carbohydrates or fat or protein is, or low carbohydrates, fat and protein. So here we go. So first of all, it's looking at per 100 grams. There's no point in looking at serving size because we don't know what serving size between each product will be. Some are 25 grams, some are 33, some are 50 gram servings. So you can't compare 33 grams to 50 grams because they're not in context. So put it into context. And the next thing is volume. Again, makes no sense to compare. So a volume of milk in comparison with yogurt, they are completely different densities, so you're not going to be able to compare the two. So do it by weighing and per 100 grams. So I've pulled a few things out of the cupboards, and these are kind of everyday foods that most people will probably have. So hopefully you can get a better understanding of understanding nutritional labels. So I'll be putting all the nutritional labels here, hopefully. Let's get started with spaghetti. So like I said, I'm only going to be looking at fat, carbs and protein. We can talk about fiber and vitamins and minerals in another video. So fat, 1.5 grams per 100 grams uncooked. So cooked and uncooked make a big difference, but how do we measure that? We essentially can't. So I'm going to be looking at whatever the label tells me. That's what you can assume you're going to be consuming. When we start talking about methods of cooking, that will make a difference. That's going way too far into it, especially for your average gym goer. So just count what's on the label. So back to spaghetti. 1.5 grams per 100 of fat, nothing. Carbohydrates, 72 grams. Well, it's pretty expected. Pasta is a typical example of a carbohydrate food. So that's 72% carbs, so we know it's very high. Surprisingly so, it's got 12 grams of protein. I've only just looked at this, so yeah, that has actually surprised me. So this particular example is not too bad in the ways of protein, considering it's a carbohydrate-heavy food example. So 12 grams, and that will be incomplete protein with pasta. So we've got a carbohydrate-heavy food there. Chickpeas. So Jamie Oliver. Fat, 4.3 grams. Again, 4.5%, you know, it's nothing. Carbohydrates, 15.6 grams. It's still fairly low, especially when we're looking at in comparison with pasta. And protein is 6.1 grams. That's pretty low. You know, that's half of what we had in the pasta there. So this is pretty decent if you're on a fairly kind of looking for a low calorie count, looking for the deficit that you're trying to chase if you need to get into fat loss or want to get into fat loss. Ah, okay. So this also contains, right, let me restart this. This is chickpeas. It also contains pre-cooked lentils, rice. So it's already a ready, complete protein. However, it's only 6.1 grams. Now this is where labeling marketing is pretty smart. 6.1 grams is pretty much nothing. It's not a good source of protein, I would argue. But if you look at the label, it will say source of protein. They're not lying, but it's not a very high amount of protein. So it's a bit... lots of things are sources of protein. It's not, I would argue, a decent source of protein. You're not getting much out of it, but it is a complete protein, so you can bear that in mind. But 6.1 grams, I'm not going to rely on that for my protein intake. All right, let's have another look at your typical kind of carbohydrate example. Potatoes. Potatoes are good. Fat, 0.1 grams. All right, so nothing. Carbohydrates, 17.5 grams. Surprisingly low. Everyone always goes on about how carbohydrate heavy potatoes are, generally speaking, and well, these aren't. You know, that's 17% carbs. It's barely anything. You know, that is low. And protein, 1.8 grams. All right, so it doesn't really contain any protein. However, this is something you could put in as a way of getting quite full and having low calories. Great example, potatoes. Apples have been getting quite a bad rep for unjustified reasons. So again, per 100 grams, 0.1 grams of fat, that's expected. Carbohydrates, 11.8 grams, so not much. So don't worry about having an apple and how much carbs it contains. Carbs aren't the devil, number one, and number two, they don't contain much carbs anyway. Protein is 0.4 grams. All right, so you're not going to have it for that. But yeah, it's pretty low calories. That will keep you full for quite some time as well. Okay, so they're like real typical carbohydrate examples. Let's have a look at some protein examples. So you got some tuna, fat per 100 grams, 0.8, nothing. Carbohydrates, 0. Protein, 26 grams. So if you want a big hit of protein, tuna's the one. I've got some cream cheese here. Cheese and obviously tuna are both examples of complete protein, so you don't have to combine it with anything to get a complete protein. So fat, 21 grams. Carbohydrates, 4.3. Protein, 5.4. So this is quite a fatty food, and the issue with the word fatty, to me, everyone always assumes that means it makes you fat. That is not the case. When you're looking at macronutrients, fat contains per gram 9 calories, carbohydrates 4 calories, protein 4 calories. So we do have to bear in mind that fat is over double the calories of both carbohydrates and protein. So if someone's looking to decrease calories, a good source of decreasing it is by decreasing how much fat you take in. That doesn't mean you cut out fat, but it might mean things like your cream cheese might have to be reduced a little bit, either by having the low fat option or reducing how much of it you have in general. Because 21 grams of fat, it's not particularly high, but it's certainly higher than the previous examples of foods that I've looked at so far. Skyr yogurt or Skyr, whatever, that yogurt. Fat under 0.5, so this is the fat-free option, so there's no fat in it basically. Carbohydrates, 4 grams, nothing really. Protein, 10.6 grams. Okay, like this is a complete protein, there are 10 grams of it, and basically when you all of this that you eat, you're basically just eating protein, but there's not much protein per 100 grams. It's about half of what tuna was, but that doesn't mean it's a poor source because you're not really getting any of the other macronutrients. So all the calories that are counting towards it are going to be just protein. It does say high in protein. I'd argue differently. It's medium high in protein. It's about half of tuna, less than half of tuna. Tuna is high in protein, so if we're going by that, it's less than 50%. You can't argue it's high in protein. Clever labeling, but it is a good source of protein. Can be confusing. This is an interesting one. Super Water by M&S. It's protein it's got 20 grams of collagen in. So looking at it per 100 mils, so you could argue roughly 1 milliliter is equal to 1 gram. So you can still somewhat equate it. That's not strictly true, but for the average gym goer, we don't have to have such exact figures. So what are we looking at? Fat, yeah, nothing basically. Carbohydrates, 3.2 grams, pretty much nothing. And protein, 4.3 grams. So it's really low. However, if you were to drink all of this, 500 mils, which is really not that filling because it's not as thick as something like yogurt, and it's not going to be quite as, it's going to be denser than water, but not really. So if you have half a litre, you'll have 21 grams of protein, which is really quite amazing. So for those who are looking for an extra bit of protein and not many calories, this is a very good example. So where they've listed it as protein, although it's low per 100 mils, it's easily consumed. So I'm going to say they've labelled it really well, despite it being low in protein per 100 mils. Confusing, eh? So here we got our new bag of whey protein from MyProtein. I'm not sponsored by them. By all means, if they want to sponsor me though, that'd be great, because I buy a lot of your products and I recommend a lot of your products as well. So obviously this, you want to have as much protein in as you can, because this is a protein supplement. So on the front it says 21 grams of protein, 4.5 grams of branched chain amino acids, which basically makes no sense to me. By all means, if this makes sense to you and you understand that, write to me. I don't understand it, I'll admit that. But as far as I'm aware, protein is amino acids are protein. Obviously there is a breakdown of the amino acids within the protein, but this is a complete protein. So where they got 4.5 grams from, I don't know. So don't ask me about it. So looking at the protein per 100 grams, it's 82 grams, 82%. So way higher than all of the examples I've given. This is why it's so useful as a food supplement. If you need to get that hit of protein, you're not quite hitting the kind of minimum sufficient amount, then you can supplement your diet with this. Fat, 5 grams. Carbohydrates, 4 grams. Pretty much nothing. So when you're looking for a protein powder, if it's less than 75% protein, you're buying a crap protein powder, or you've mistaken it for a weight gainer. Make sure you're buying the one that is going to help you towards your goals. If someone's looking for a surplus, a weight gainer's a good thing to buy if they struggle to get food in. Cool. Right, another example from MyProtein, we've got their collagen protein. Let's have a look. So, fat, 0.4 grams, nothing. Carbohydrates, 4.7 grams, nothing. Protein, 81 grams, so 81%, just under the whey protein example that I gave you there. Yeah, pretty much the same. So obviously I could spend all day looking at all different nutritional labels and saying whether they're high or low and good and bad. There's no such thing as good and bad and high and low. It's context, remember that. But last but not least, I thought I'd look at some coconut milk that we've got. So fat, 0.9, carbohydrates, 2.7, protein, 0.1. So basically it contains almost no macronutrients. So per 100 milliliters, you're only looking at 20 calories. So that's nothing. So if you're looking to make a smoothie, perhaps using a bit of whey or collagen or your protein powder of choice, and you're trying to keep the calories low, instead of adding things like milk that is dairy and fairly high in calories, especially in comparison with something like coconut milk, then this is a really good option. So I hope all of that has made sense. It's a lot more complicated than I'm making out today, but going back to what I've said before, for the average gym goer, you probably don't need to know those complexities. Let's get the simple kind of base of the pyramid first, and you can start working up that pyramid once you've met the bottom of the pyramid first. So I would argue the bottom of the pyramid is hitting your calorie amount that you require for whether it's fat loss or muscle gain, whether you're trying to get into a surplus or a deficit. Put it into context, and knowing and understanding food labels to the degree that I've hopefully taught you today is all you really need to understand to hit your calorie amounts. Thanks for watching.